Welcome to Business Financing Insights from Celtic Capital. In this segment, Celtic Capital's Chief Credit Officer, Alex Fallow, joins President and CEO Mark Hafner to share thoughts on why it's in a commercial banker's best interest to exit a client quickly when the bank wants that client out.
So Mark, why would a bank want to exit a client?
Well, if the client isn't in compliance with the bank, or maybe they're borderline, and the client comes in and kind of pleads their case and says, things are going to turn around this quarter or that quarter, they may want to give them a little time, but it can be dangerous if they give them too much time, because typically they've come up butting up against that compliance issue because the client is in some sort of decline, and that will typically continue. And so if the bank extends them too long, they're putting themselves at risk of the borrower being able to exit at some point when they finally say, okay, now it's time to go, because the client has deteriorated further, and it may risk the bank getting out whole at that point in time. And so trying to extend the client along to be nice may actually have a detrimental effect to the client and to the bank. The client typically won't get turned around fast enough for the bank. And if the bank just takes the stance of, hey, it's time to move you to an asset-based lender or some other form of financing so that we can get you back sooner than later, it's usually better for everybody concerned in the long run.
That's right. I think there's also the flip side, where many times you have companies that are experiencing rapid growth. And banks are really uncomfortable with that. And the longer the bank holds on to the company, the more it limits the company's ability to grow, and could actually harm the company and eventually the bank.
And one other issue that often gets overlooked is when banks extend and extend and extend and then finally say no, they've developed a pattern with the borrower of extending and agreeing. And so the borrower now may be in the mindset of, I just have to go back and ask and I'll get another extension. And that starts to get into lender liability issues if you've sort of prompted the borrower that they'll be extended, and then all of a sudden you take a heavy hand. So you have to be careful. And if you are going to extend, there should be some cost to the borrower. Don't just extend and extend, but make it tougher. Tighten up on your lending parameters, charge fees, that type of thing, to avoid those pitfalls.
And you may have mentioned this earlier, but certainly there's an issue with the potential deterioration of the asset base the longer a client holds on to a deteriorating company. And that makes it much more difficult for an alternative lender to be able to come in and have enough availability in the asset base to pay off the bank.
Yeah, we've seen that a number of times where we'll first get the call, hey, would you guys be interested in financing this deal, from the banker? And when we look at it and say, oh yeah, this looks like a nice asset-based deal, then the bank thinks, well, then I can probably carry it for a little while. And maybe it's 6 months later when they finally decide they have to get rid of it. In the interim, the assets have declined, and it becomes harder for us to finance them, or we can't get the bank paid in full. And so here the banker thinks they're doing the client a favor by extending them, and at the end of the day, the borrower pays for it, as does the bank.
And one more thing, Mark, the relationship that Celtic Capital has with its referral-based banks allows us to give the client the option of keeping their treasury products at the bank that is referring the deal to us, so that it makes a transition easier for that company back to the bank.
Yeah, good point. And that helps the bank by keeping some revenue from the borrower coming into the bank. It keeps the bank focused on the client, and so they can track their progress and know when they're ready to come back.
Thank you for listening today. If you'd like to talk to Mark Hafner about your specific business financing issue or about making referrals to Celtic Capital, sign up for a quick one-on-one chat with him at www.celticcapital.com. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our podcast channel to hear more business financing insights from Celtic Capital.